This first one comes from Cole Wagner. He says, hot take, we don't need any more Andor sets. There isn't really anything of note they can make sets on, and there is so much more stuff we need other than more Andor sets. And, well, I know a lot of you guys probably aren't going to like to hear this, but for the most part, he's right. There's really only 2 sets they could make from the show that would still be new material, that of course being Luthen's Holdcraft and then the TIE Avenger. And don't get me wrong, it's not like either of those sets are just take it or leave it. I mean, I think we really need those. I really want them, and I think a lot of you guys do too. But other than those 2 sets, there's really not much else from this show to make. And that's where he's kind of right with this comment, because I see people always being like, we need more Andor sets, we need more Andor sets. Like there's enough material from the show to just make entire waves of sets, and there's just not. If LEGO ever makes those 2 ships I just mentioned, there's really nothing else. I know a lot of you guys might be thinking about that Cantwell Star Destroyer that was seen in the first season, and I'm just gonna say right now, LEGO would never make this thing. First of all, it's a very bizarre ship that's not too recognizable, and if they made it, it would end up being like at least a $170 set, and they're just not gonna waste a budget like that on a set like this. And also, because of those giant radar dishes on the front, this set would most likely not be able to sit flat on its own and would need some type of stand, and that's something LEGO just doesn't do for playsets, and we know they're obviously not going to make this a UCS set. So if you're thinking of this one being made, I hate to break it to you, but I think this one is most likely out of the picture. So yeah, besides Luthen's Holdcraft and the TIE Avenger, there's not much else. Up next, we have one from a random person. He says, hot take, LEGO needs to start making UCS sets based on the sequels instead of remaking old UCS sets. I would love a UCS Kylo Ren shuttle for like $400 to $500. And yeah, a UCS Kylo Ren shuttle would be freaking insane. I would love that too. And yeah, if it was minifigure scale, I'd imagine it being probably a $500 or $600 set. However, again, I'd be all for that. I think that would be so cool. However, unfortunately, not to rain on your parade here, I think that's the only ship from the sequels that would work as a UCS set. And I think the popularity and overall love of the 2019 playset kind of backs this. That's an amazing set, and despite it being from The Rise of Skywalker, I think most of the community generally loves it. But I mean, yeah, that's really it. I mean, I don't think there's anything else from the sequels that would work besides this ship right here. There's just nothing else that's popular enough or liked enough from those movies to be made into a set of this size. I know Snoke's Supremacy might be an obvious choice for some people. However, LEGO didn't even make a playset of that ship, so they're definitely not going to make a UCS version of it. I think we might see a Midi-scale version of that ship sometime in the near future, but other than that, we're definitely not getting this. Kylo Ren's command shuttle really is the only thing from these movies that would work as a UCS set. And actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I could actually see LEGO doing this within the next 5 to 10 years. Lost Spellcheck says, hot take, fans had too high of expectations for the new ARC 170 and hate on it unnecessarily. It's a great set with flaws that are definitely understandable, but I personally think were overblown. And yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from, and I've actually thought this too. The 2010 ARC 170 being such a great set, combined with a literal 15-year gap from that one to the new one that just released, is kind of a recipe for fans to just be let down, because that's like too much anticipation building. But on top of that, I do think there are still things that are wrong with this new ARC 170, and yeah, there are some people that overreacted to them and did kind of blow them out of proportion. But the main thing for me is just the stickers on the windshield. At this point, I've talked about this so many times, but I just hate how they look. I hate how they're miscolored when they're put on there, and I hate how they're misrepresented on the box. They're supposed to be white, but the actual color looks like a freaking wet paper towel. And unlike some other flaws with this set, this one is actually very, very noticeable. Like, you don't even have to look for it to notice. And then considering that the 2010 model didn't have this problem, the stickers on that set look fine, it just kind of makes it even worse. But for the most part, I can get behind your argument. I see where you're coming from. This next one comes from Dr. Doom. He says, hot take, the 2024 Sarlacc Pit is overhated. It's the price holding it back. It has 2 really good builds and 4 good/decent minifigures, not including Boba Fett. And I'm so happy someone is finally saying this, because for the most part, I agree with you. I think the builds in this set are beautiful. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's easily the best Desert Skiff and Sarlacc Pit like it was made, and it's honestly not even close. The Sarlacc Pit especially, I mean, it looks so much better than the older ones they made in the past. I mean, it's almost like a diorama because it's so big and there's so much terrain built around it, and I really like that. I genuinely think it looks really, really good. However, again, it is overpriced at $80, which is disappointing because that kind of overshadowed the quality of the build builds. And also, of course, it includes the episode 5 version of Boba Fett and not the episode 6 version. And also, another problem I've had with this set is that it doesn't include a weakway or some type of bad guy to drive the actual desert skiff itself. And I think for the $80 price tag, they could have included that extra figure, but they didn't. I mean, yeah, this set definitely does have its cons, but the builds are very high quality and look really good. And like you, I wish more people would acknowledge that. Remy Barbier says, hot take, we need a first order troop transport remake. It's been 10 plus years, it would sell well. And I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of like a lukewarm take at best. This is definitely not a hot take, but I still wanted to discuss it because I agree with you, like 100% agree with you. I mean, there's actually a handful of sequel sets I want to be remade, but this one is definitely near the top of the list. And as a matter of fact, I actually think there should have been a 10-year anniversary Force Awakens set. LEGO only released 2 of them, which is understandable. I mean, obviously they were going to release like a whole wave dedicated to this, but the 2 they chose honestly kind of suck, especially Kylo Ren's command shuttle. And I really wish instead they would have went with a first order troop transport and maybe like a Rey speeder. Those 2 sets as remakes to celebrate the anniversary would have been a million times better. The Scowl says, hot take, after the disaster that was Bakara, I don't want a Phase 2 Wolf anymore in fear of how badly my boy would get butchered. And this is completely valid, and I honestly think this way about every Phase 2 clone trooper that people want made. I mean, obviously 12-year-old me back in 2016 would have loved for these clone troopers to be made like Commander Wolf, Commander Doom, Echo, and really just any other popular named Phase 2 clone trooper. But today in 2026, after the disasters of figures like Bakara and Commander Fox and even Fives, I'm like, honestly, until LEGO chooses to make these Phase 2 clones good again, I don't want these commanders to be made just because they'd be ruined and then LEGO would not make them again for years and years. And I mean, your comment about Wolf perfectly fits that narrative. They'd use the ugly helmet mold, they'd probably mess up his helmet prints in some way, and then of course he'd also have a printed waist cape, which would just make him look dumb. In the mid-2010s, they would have done him perfectly though, and actually I bet a lot of you guys don't know this, but he was originally planned to be in the AV7 canon, because there's an old preliminary image of the set, and on the box art of that image, it literally says Commander Wolf instead of just 2 Phase 2 Wolfpack troopers. And if they actually would have ended up putting him in that set, that would have been legendary. He would have been one of the best clone troopers ever made. But today in 2026, they just don't make Phase 2 clone troopers like they used to anymore, so he'd probably suck. The Phase 1 clone troopers are a different story though. LEGO rarely makes them anymore. However, the modern Phase 1 clone troopers are absolutely beautiful, and I would absolutely love to see a new Phase 1 Rex, a new Phase 1 Cody, a new Phase 1 Fox, you name it, in the modern Phase 1 clone trooper style. I think those will look really good, even though LEGO would still probably give them printed waist capes. Lapidat says, hot take, I truly believe that the newest UCS X-Wing is a 10 out of 10 set, and that the engines actually scale extremely well compared to the old models built for the first movie. And while I definitely wouldn't say this newest UCS X-Wing is a 10 out of 10 set, because there are a few proportion issues, mainly the wings being too short, but I do agree with you overall. I think this is by far the best UCS X-Wing out of the 3. I mean, I don't even understand how that's even an argument. And I also think it's a gorgeous display piece. I mean, this is one of my favorite sets in my collection. I think it looks amazing. It's very intriguing, and I love how you can pose it in different angles on the stand. But for some reason, when the set came out, a lot of people just didn't think the same way as me, I guess. And I remember trying to defend this set so much, but nobody really liked it. And since then, I unfortunately think it's just kind of gone under the radar, and most people are leaving this set in the past. But hey, I still 100% agree with you. This next one comes from Keenan Wilson. He says, I didn't even know the printed waist capes were supposed to be waist capes until someone pointed it out. And I'm gonna be honest, when I first saw the printed waist capes on Clone Troopers and Snow Troopers in 2022, I didn't think they were supposed to be waist capes either, until of course everyone started talking about it. But when I first saw them, I do remember thinking that it was just supposed to be extra detail on the legs, because they don't look like waist capes at all. That's how bad they are. They're just 2 little slivers on the sides of these clones' legs that don't do anything. And I'm gonna be honest, at this point, if LEGO isn't gonna give us actual cloth waist capes again, they should at least just stop printing them and make them normal legs, because again, the 2 slivers on the side just do not look good. This next one is great. It comes from Jalen_42. He says, the Nebulan B was the right choice in the old UCS fan boat. UCS capital ships are always better than oversized starfighters, and 90% of people would rather have a minifigure scaled gunship. Yes, I really think the Nebulan B should have won in that old UCS fan boat. That's what I voted for, and at the time, like you, I was against the idea of a UCS gunship, because while I do think the oversized starfighters look really cool and are awesome UCS sets, at the time, I didn't really think the gunship was a type of ship that would work as being oversized. Thankfully, the set actually did turn out really good. I mean, it's a beautiful model. It's definitely a top 10 UCS set in my opinion, but like you said, I do think people would just prefer a minifigure scale play scale gunship, and the Nebulan B would have just looked way cooler. I mean, that's a super bizarre ship, and I would have loved to see how LEGO would have pulled it off as a UCS set. I think it'd look amazing. It'd be a very intriguing display piece, but no, the gunship ended up winning the vote built for obvious reasons because it's a clone set. But hey, my fingers are still crossed that a UCS Nebulon B is on the table for LEGO at some point. Murloc Mage says, hot take, the Star Wars logo set should never retire. And when I first read this comment, it really didn't do much for me. However, now that I've sat and thought about it for a little bit, this actually makes so much sense. As some of us might know, there are popular sets that LEGO tries to keep on shelves at all times. The main ones being a TIE Fighter, an X-Wing, and a Millennium Falcon of some sort. There will never be a time when these three sets right here, in some form, are not on shelves. They will always be available in some way. And while the Star Wars logo set itself definitely isn't as popular as those other sets, I think it still can definitely fit that category. Because, I mean, it's literally a brick-built Star Wars logo made out of simple pieces, and it looks great, and it has a decent price too. And unlike the sets I just mentioned, the Millennium Falcon, the X-Wing, and the TIE Fighter, and then other sets, this logo set really doesn't need any upgrades, so a remake would be unnecessary. And therefore, in theory, there's no point for it to retire, because it's a timeless looking product that anyone can buy at any time for their LEGO collection. So yeah, this comment really does make a lot of sense. You just gotta think about it for a little bit. Yu Wayo says, hot take, the classic LEGO TIE Fighters 1999 to 2007 are the most accurate in terms of color and minifig scale. And you're actually kind of both right and wrong. In terms of being minifigure scale, they actually are the most accurate, because from what I know, the TIE Fighters in the 2010s, like the First Order TIE Fighter and then the Solo TIE Fighter, are both slightly over minifigure scale, and then the TIE Fighters we have now, like the 2024 model as well as the 2021 model, are slightly under minifigure scale. But the older ones like you're mentioning are, from what I've heard, perfectly minifigure scale, and then I think the 2012 one actually is too. So again, you're right in that area, but in terms of the color, I mean, blue and black was just obviously not accurate. Yes, in the movies they do have a very clear blue tint to them, but it's not definitely all the way solid blue. It does look more gray than it does blue. So choosing between gray and blue in terms of which color is more accurate, I'm gonna go with gray. However, in reality, sand blue would definitely be the most accurate and best looking, but that's a different topic. He says, hot take, the new MTT is the best one they've ever made. It's far more modern, detailed, and better looking than the 2007 one, and has better play features than both the 2007 and 2014 one. The only problem is that it's 30 euros overpriced. And yeah, I actually agree with this. In my review of the set, I did say that I think it's the best looking MTT LEGO has made. Despite its small size, it just looks phenomenal. The detail is very impressive, and I think just strictly from an aesthetic standpoint, it does look better than the 2007 model, and I own both of them, so I'm not just saying that out of nowhere. But like you said, the only problem is that it's overpriced. In my opinion, I think this should be about a $120 set, but no, it's $160. Oh, and I guess the sloppiness of Bly is a problem too, but the main problem is really just the price. This next one's a good one. It comes from Jackelsenberg. He says, hot take, the best minifig of all time is the B1 Battle Droid. And I love this because I'm pretty sure the reason you're saying this is because the B1 Battle Droid is the only LEGO Star Wars minifigure that LEGO has never changed. They came up with the design in 1999, and it has been the exact same ever since. Aside from 2007 when they added the addition of the straight arm piece so they could hold the blaster upright. But I mean, let's be honest, that's not really a significant change. So yeah, this is pretty much the only LEGO Star Wars figure ever made that has gone through no design changes. And with that being said, in theory, you could definitely claim that this figure is perfect because it's never needed a design change. I mean, obviously there's figures that look way better, like Darth Malgus or the ARC Trooper or Darth Revan, you name it. But the B1 Battle Droid is really a figure that's played its role perfectly ever since the beginning. So yeah, I could definitely get behind this being one of the best figures of all time. Kami-So2NW says, hot take, the TIE Striker is the greatest non-UCS set made in the last decade. And I mean, I could probably get behind this. I freaking love the TIE Striker. I think it's one of the best TIE variants LEGO has ever made. The build and the minifigure lineup is pretty much perfect, and actually, I reviewed this set years ago, and I gave it a very high score, like a 9.5 or maybe even a 10 out of 10. I remember giving it a very high score a few years ago when I reviewed it, but in terms of the best play scale set in the last 10 years, this definitely isn't the first one that would come to my head. However, I do think I could get behind it being an underrated contender. Mr. Bob Potatoes says, hot take, I think it's genuinely greedy to not print on pieces. I have a couple Mega Construct sets and they have all printed pieces, like 15 in a $25 set. It's crazy, just look at the Warthog from Halo. And yeah, recently after I've reviewed a few third-party LEGO companies, that being Fantasy and then Lumibricks, I have to agree that it's absolutely ridiculous for LEGO to not print all their pieces. Like I just reviewed the architecture firm from Fantasy, which is a very beautiful set. The pieces are just as high quality as LEGO because they use the same ABS plastic. It's extremely detailed. It it has over 3,500 pieces, and like you're saying, it does not have any stickers. It has all printed pieces. And then on top of that, it only retails for $160. And after reviewing that, that's where I was like, alright, LEGO having stickers on any set is absolutely ridiculous, much less very big sets like the $1,000 Death Star. It's literally just straight greed, and they're being outdone by these third-party companies more and more. Casey Hockenberry says, hot take, the Starship Collection shouldn't include minifigures because it would increase the price of already overpriced sets, and a large portion of the target audience is older and may not care about minifigures, only display. And you are actually right, and I agree and disagree with this at the same time, because you're just looking at this from a different perspective. The reason we want figures in these midi-scale sets is because they're already so overpriced. If they weren't so overpriced, I don't think many people would care that much, but since they are, it's like, alright, can we get a little something extra for what we're having to pay for these things? But then you're coming in here with a different point of view, saying that they're already overpriced and that LEGO wouldn't add a minifigure to make up for how much they're already charging. LEGO would add a minifigure and then charge even more. And you're most likely completely right. I mean, if LEGO added figures to these sets, they'd probably all be $5 or $10 more and not make up for how expensive they already are like we'd want them to. This next one here comes from Joe Hio. He says, hot take, midi-scale is one of the best sub-themes in LEGO Star Wars history for getting ships that we couldn't really get in Playscale or UCS, like the Home One and the Acclimator. And I 100% agree with you. I mean, lately I've been seeing quite a bit of hate towards the midi-scale subline, and I've honestly just never understood it because I honestly think that almost all of the midi-scale sets LEGO has released are really good. Yes, they're overpriced, which I think is the main reason a lot of people look down upon them, but they're still just very fun builds. They're fun to collect, they're fun to display, and like you said, we're able to get ships that LEGO normally wouldn't make, like the Home One. I've been wanting LEGO to make a Playscale Home One for years, and it doesn't seem like they're gonna do it, but at the very least, we got a midi-scale one, and I'm really happy with that. Same thing with the Acclimator and the Invisible Hand. I think a lot of people are happy about those sets too. The only actual bad midi-scale set LEGO has released, in my opinion, is the Kylo Ren's Command Shuttle. For a number of reasons, that set just kind of sucks, and no, not just because it's overpriced. The actual build is not very good, but other than that one, when you take pricing out of the equation, because these are overpriced, I do think in terms of just build-wise, all of these sets are hits, but lately people just haven't seemed to like them that much. And aside from them being overpriced, I think another reason people look down upon them is because people are just kind of getting tired of 18 plus sets as a whole, which that in itself is definitely valid because I also think we're getting too many 18 plus sets. I mean, all of the helmets, the buildable characters, the midi-scale sets, it is a lot. I mean, I really do think we should have just UCS sets and maybe one other 18 plus set subline, and then they can kind of rotate them out. But I mean, if I had to pick between the non-UCS 18 plus sublines, that being the helmet sets, the dioramas, the midi-scale sets, and the buildable characters, I'm gonna pick the midi-scale sets because I think it's the best sub-theme out of these options. So again, I 100% agree with you. Big B Reviews, he says, hot take, the 2008 ATTE is overrated. It has too much dark gray, it has very large gaps, and the interior has like no floor space. And I agree with this. I've actually kind of thought this for quite a while now. The 2008 ATTE, as cool as that set is, I mean, everyone loves a massive playset, but as cool as it is, it's just kind of outdated. Like you said, the interior doesn't have much floor space, and there's a lot of gaps in the build. And you know, if you would have said this like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been an actual hot take. But I think nowadays, at this point, a lot of people have kind of come to their senses and just realized that this set and other sets from 2008 just are outdated. And the later sets in the 2010s from like 2014 to 2019 is where the quality of LEGO Star Wars really reached a high point. And then from there, it's kind of been downhill since. But again, back to this ATTE, I agree with this, and I think a lot of other people do too. It's like, yeah, the set's awesome, it's iconic, we all love it, but I think most people think the 2013 and the 2022 ATTEs are a lot better. This next one comes from Miguel Martinez. He says, hot take, the 2017 Republic fighter tank is the best one out of the 3 fighter tanks. And just like the last one, this is another one that I strongly agree with. I've been saying for a long time now that the 2017 fighter tank is the best one out of the 3, and it's because it's pretty much 100% accurate to what this vehicle looks like in Battlefront 2. It's small, it's compact, it's sleek, and it's detailed, and LEGO just did an amazing job at capturing it here. And I've always thought it's better than the original 2008 model. As cool and as epic as that model is, it's one, oversized, and also I've never really liked how it doesn't have any of their minifigures besides just 2 clone troopers. I wish it included some battle droids or something, but then we have this 2017 model which kind of just does everything better. It might not be as big and as epic as the original one, but it's pretty much 100% accurate, and it has more minifigures. And then the newest one from 2022, it's just ugly. The only good thing about that set are the minifigures. So yeah, I do strongly think this is the best one out of the 3. Don't get me wrong, the 2008 model is great, but in my opinion, yes, I do think this one is better. Sergeant Chris Briggs, he says, hot take, the 2009 Anakin's Y-Wing is an overrated set, and I would have preferred a standard Clone Wars Y-Wing Y-Wing with clone pilots. And thank you so much for saying this, because I've been saying this for years. I never understood why they made the Clone Wars Y-Wing Anakin's Y-Wing and not just a standard Republic Y-Wing with clone troopers. It just felt so unnecessary to include Anakin and Ahsoka because we already had those figures from the previous year, 2008. So like you, I really would have preferred some clone troopers instead with this set. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the model still looks really good. It's really beautiful and ahead of its time for 2009. It's just still, to this day, always been a weird choice to me from LEGO that they decided to include Anakin and Ahsoka and not a clone pilot. So yeah, I 100% agree with your comment, and I'm really happy I'm not alone on this one. Jack Signup49 says, hot take, inaccuracies where there's missing details is better than the wrong detail. It can depend, but one example I thought of was the printed waist cape on the Galactic Marines and other clones bothers a lot of us fans, but I've actually never seen anyone complain about the Marines missing their pauldron. And yes, I 100% agree with this, and I've actually briefly touched on this in the past, but if LEGO was trying to include something on a figure for accuracy purposes and it looks ugly, I would rather them just not include it. And the best example of this, like you mentioned, really are the printed waist capes on these clone troopers, because I mean, if they're not going to give us physical cloth waist capes, I would rather these figures just not have waist capes at all, because the printed waist capes are actually ugly to me. They just make the legs look tacky and they barely even resemble a waist cape. He says, hot take, a lot of pauldrons and waist capes made for custom figs look bad, especially the ones with pouches and ammo belts sticking off of them. And yes, I agree with you. I think I've talked about this in the past, but I've actually never been the biggest fan of super hyper detailed custom figures, and this is in no way hate towards any of the custom figure companies out there. I respect what they do, and I'm friends with a lot of them actually, but sometimes it seems like it's just a competition of how much detail we can cram onto one figure, and it just ends up making it look pretty tacky in my opinion. And I think your comment about over detailed waist capes kind of perfectly fits into that category. I mean, when you look at some of these custom clone troopers that people are selling, it's like there's just so much going on that it kind of just looks like a mess. I know that sounds pretty harsh, and again, it's in no way hate to these guys, but I just think a lot of these figures look pretty tacky. There's just so much printing on the legs and the arms, and you have side leg printing and back leg printing, and I think some companies actually do hand printing now, and in my opinion, I just think that's too far. Again, it just comes off as a competition of how much detail we can cram onto these little figures. I definitely don't think this way about all custom figures though, because some of them actually do look pretty good because they make them look like a figure LEGO themselves would actually make. I guess GCC is the best example of this because those custom clone troopers look like clone troopers that LEGO themselves would produce because they're not so overly detailed like some other ones. But yeah, overall, I think too often custom figures just go too crazy on the details and then it just makes the figure come off as tacky. And I know I kind of went down a rabbit hole and strayed away from your comment that was specifically about waist capes, but it all falls in the same category. This next one comes from Obvious Al. He says that my hot take is that the next iteration of TIE Fighters should be made with sand blue and not light bluish gray. And I'm so happy you said this because I 100% agree with you. My buddy HP Briggs on Instagram actually made a few mocks of TIE Fighters in sand blue and they look absolutely beautiful. I mean, I honestly never would have thought that sand blue would have been a good looking color for TIE Fighters until I saw him make these and my mind was literally blown. The sand blue and the black is such a gorgeous looking colorway, and not only does it look good, it's also pretty much 100% accurate to what these TIE Fighters look like in the original trilogy, because obviously they do have a bluish tint to them, and that's actually why LEGO made the original TIE Fighters in all blue, and then obviously later on they started making them in gray. But now that we have sand blue as a color, it's literally the most accurate option in my opinion. It looks pretty much identical to the color that is in the original trilogy, and then on top of that, again, like I've said for the millionth time, it also just looks really pretty. So yes, I 100% agree with this comment. I would love to see LEGO make TIE Fighters in this color. Way Comment says, hot take, we need an updated General Grievous minifigure. The current design leaves a lot to be desired. He's inspired by the outdated 2008 Clone Wars style. He's too short, has a force hunchback, and he can't rotate his wrist to spin his lightsabers. And until I read this comment, I honestly had never really thought about this that much, but what you're saying actually is really valid. I think we could use a new General Grievous minifigure. The current one they're using, well, I say current, just the most recent one, they've had for over a decade. They introduced it in 2010 and then released it again in 2014 and then in 2020, which is quite a long time for a Star Wars figure to stay relatively the same. And an updated one, like you mentioned, having rotating wrists so you can spin the lightsabers and then also being a bit taller would be really nice. And honestly, since LEGO hasn't made Grievous in so long, the last time being in 2020, that does make me wonder if they are currently in the process of designing a new one. This next one comes from Guy That Plays a Piano. He says, we need more Rebellion battle packs that just have Rebel troopers and vehicles. And I agree with you, I've been saying this for years now. LEGO has neglected Rebel battle packs and really just Rebellion sets in general besides like X-Wings for so long, and I don't understand why. lie. I mean, I guess they don't sell very well, but at the very least, they're awesome. The 2016 Battlefront Rebel Battle Pack is literally one of my all-time personal favorite battle packs. I'm not saying it's one of the all-time best, but I definitely have a personal bias towards this set. I think it's awesome. Same thing goes for the Rogue One Rebel Battle Pack and the one that came out in 2008. I think they're all just great sets. And of course, I would love to see modern Rebel Battle Packs with modern Rebel Ground Troopers and modern Rebel Speeders. I think LEGO could pull it off really well, but for some reason, they just kind of neglect the Rebellion. And it's really disappointing. I mean, the fact that we've literally gotten, what, only 3 Rebel Battle Packs in the past 19 years is kind of sad, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I agree with your comment. I too really want more Rebel Battle Packs. This next one is a good one. It comes from Big Apple. He says, the new turbo tank is the most aesthetically accurate one we've received so far. And I'm not gonna lie, I agree with you. I'm not saying this set is good. I'm not saying the build is accurate, but in terms of just strictly an aesthetic standpoint, it looks really, really good. And I briefly touched on this in my review of the set, but from some angles, this set is very aesthetically pleasing. Now, the 2016 Turbo Tank is not far behind it. I think that set also looks very aesthetically pleasing, mainly just because, in my opinion, in shaping and detail, it is the most accurate Turbo Tank they've made. But I'm just talking about looks here. Obviously, in terms of overall playability and just an overall set, the 2010 Turbo Tank is pretty much always going to take the cake. But in terms of just aesthetics, this 2025 one is up there, if not the best. And the 2016 one is right below it, if not tied with it. But again, I'm not saying this 2025 model is a good set. There's still tons of problems with it. It's overpriced, it's fragile, there are inaccuracies, but at the very least, the model does look pretty good.